everyone, welcome to my live stream. My name is Denise Hutchins and I'm broadcasting to you from Studio Mikarts. Our charity of the month is Veganuary, and you can help me, help them, help the animals in a few different ways. One, consider donating to our fundraiser here on Twitch. We have 10 British pounds as our goal for this month. Please do donate if you can, but even if you can't, the second way to help is just watch my stream and bring your friends, because I'll be making a donation of my own at the end of the month based on my unique viewers count on Twitch. You can also find a link to them in my Twitch description, or if you're watching this on YouTube later as a recording, it should be in the description there. Today is Thursday, which means it's time for some more illustration. I'm just gonna pick up right where I left off on this piece. I'm drawing the Norse dwarf dragon. I started calling him a dwarf dragon yesterday because he's a dwarf who then transforms into a dragon. And I've lost my train of thought. Okay, we're drawing Fafnir. Oh, this is the next entry in my Maginaturalist sketchbook series. My words are failing me. And it will be Patreon rewards when I'm done, so I'm really hoping that I will be able to finish this today. I think I'm being distracted by the fact that my secondary cameras are very cool in color, and for some in my primary camera, the light, it looks right for it. So for some reason, my secondary and tertiary cameras are very cool in color, and it's distracting me. So let me see if I can do anything about that. Why are you so cool? See, white balance. Oh, it's on auto. Put my hand in here. Does that help? If I put my hand in here, does that help? Oh, it looks crazy. Actually, that did help. I think it did help some to put my hand in. It's still a little bit cool. I'll just leave it. Let's try not to be perfectionistic. Distracted by those cameras, but I don't need to look at those cameras now because it's time to look at my Fafnir piece. For anyone who has not seen one of these Maginaturalist sketchbook pieces come to life before, my formula is using my Encyclopedia of Magical Creatures. I'm going through A to Z. We are on F. That's Fafnir is the subject. That was the first entry under F. The idea is a Maginaturalist, which is a magic naturalist, so magical creatures naturalist, going around the world documenting the magical creatures that she finds. And the story is she has to travel light, so this is all she's got in the story. Obviously, I am using other things as well, but that's the idea, is that she just has the pen and the ink in her sketchbook. I mean, this isn't even in a sketchbook because I ran out of the sketchbook that I had been using. But I think you get the idea. And so I'm just going to continue on. The last thing I worked on was these teeny tiny scales that make up most of the body. So we're going to have a lot of that for the next little bit. So I'm going to open my ink. And, oh, I thought so. I got a little on my thumb in the opening, so I'm gonna, don't go, pen. You stay here. There you go. Get that off of my thumb. I don't want any surprise marks on my piece. It's almost gone. I think I was also distracted by my attempt to get my Happy Ranger icon in my initial chat message. Didn't work today, so I guess I can't keep that as part of it. I'll just have to change that later. I'm just trying some new stuff this week with chat, trying to see if I can get some more messages in there to help promote myself and the charities that I support. Alright, I don't think I introduced yesterday the actual dip pen I'm using. It's the Pilot Iro Utsushi with a medium nib. And what's cool about this is that it is a dip pen, but it has a fountain pen style nib. So that's different. So it's not as flexible as other dip pen nibs that I've used. But especially, I think yesterday I looked at all of the pieces I've done so far. I think this is piece number 6. So I looked at everything I've done so far, and I really like how this pen looks, having created a whole series of drawings. So I do like this pen. Even if it's not as flexible. So not as flexible means it can't make as wide a variety of line weights. So they're a lot the similar thickness each line is. I wasn't very precise with the thickness of these lines that I drew as a guide with my pencil, so I'm trying to use the guide but also keep in mind what makes sense. Coming down Fafnir's body here, it doesn't really make sense to have like one huge scale because they should be all about the same size. Also, I suppose I could introduce the ink I'm using. It's the Kuretake Zig Sumi Ink 60 is what it's called. It's my favorite ink. I was saying yesterday I could, and have done in the past, totally gush about all the reasons I love it so much. But I'm trying to stay focused right now. I really want to get this piece done ASAP because next week is when I'd like to have Patreon rewards made and sent out because it's almost the end of January. I send out physical rewards for my patrons every month. It's part of the reason why I started this series, so I could have something that I can finish a little faster, since it's only black ink on white paper. There's no complicated array of tools I'm using either. It's just the one pen. But I also started this series not just for Patreon, but to replace the ink practice I was getting back when I was doing Inktober 52, which is the weekly Inktober instead of daily over the course of the month. It's weekly over the course of a year. I used to do that on live stream. And I want to keep up with my inking skills and especially my ability to illustrate a scene using nothing but ink. Because my main project in my career, which there's not much to show because it's not ready yet to show anyone, is my illustrated novel. I work on that every day, but I'm on the writing process, so there's not anything visual to show, and the writing process is definitely not at a point where I would share it with anyone. There's lots of editing to be done, which is what I'm doing right now. And what I imagine the illustrations for that to be is actually a lot like this. Even this orientation, so that it would be like a book, so you'd flip it. So I want to keep my skills sharp for when the story is finalized, which will be the point when I can start drawing the illustrations for it. So there's multiple reasons for this series, also just because it's fun. It's not only just practical concerns. I've had that encyclopedia of magical creatures sitting on my bookshelf for ages, maybe even over a decade. I don't remember exactly when I got it. It was a long time ago. And it sat there, and it's an encyclopedia, so it's not like I sit down and read it, you know? It's not saying you can't, but it's not really high on my interest list for reading an encyclopedia. So this has been excellent for giving purpose to a book that I love, that I think is really cool, but was just sort of sitting there being a decoration instead of being any use. If you're hearing that snoring, that's Aoife, my big dog Aoife, snoring away already. Today I thought to put eye drops in before the stream, so hopefully my dry eyes will last today. Well, worst case scenario, I have a break scheduled, so put more eye drops in then. Got a little ink on my finger just now. I think I wiped it off good. Keep going. Drawing these little tiny scales. Oh, the leg is done. This leg is done. Still so many scales to draw, and then I need to start working on building up why can't I ever remember the word I'm trying to think of? I could remember it last week. It's not shade, it's not tone. Anyway, the light and dark areas. I'll remember it eventually. Remember that word. Contrast. Oh, it's there. It's swimming in my brain. I know the word. It's not tone, because that's the name of a color when you add white. It's not shade, that's the name of a color when you add black. Contrast. Value. That's what it's called. I'm going to work on the values after this. So I want to end up with 4. Four distinct values. I mean, give or take. But the idea that I came up with from this sketch here, which I'm working from, is that the crows would be darkest, the background would be the next darkest, Fafnir would be next, so the second lightest thing, and the lightest thing would be the flame and the gold. Things, I guess. Things. Well, I've got to get all these main lines down first, and then we can deal with that. I'm purposefully trying to make the scales a bit bigger on this part of his body, because this part, he's supposed to be massive in this drawing. So this part of his body would be much closer to the viewer, to the artist drawing him in the story, which is in the story of this illustration, which is the Maginaturalist herself. almost done with the scales. Wow. Okay, now I'm going to do what I did up here with his neck, which is sort of solidify the outline without doing a single line outline. Oh, Sarah is here. Hello, Sarah. Yay! Thank you for joining me. Hooray! I'm so glad that you can make it. How are you? Having a nice relaxing day today? I hope so. I wish that for you. How's everything going? Are you finally settled into your new house? I won't be surprised if the answer is no, because as I mention every time, I still have boxes full of stuff in the garage. It's packed from the last time I moved. Never unpacked them. It's on my to-do list to hang up my Lord of the Rings posters and stuff. They're just sitting out there in the garage. So sad. Basically don't want there to be any areas where it looks like, I guess he's just got a hole in him at that point. Make sure he looks solid along the edges. I think he looks pretty solid, and worst case scenario, if I missed a spot, I can just add it in on Photoshop later, because all of these go through my Photoshop refinement process before the end. So now let's add these final lines for the gold, and then we can start working on the values. One last section here at the bottom. Okay. There we have it. All the elements are now present. I have this little spike on the end of this person's tail, so I'm going to add a little bit just to make it look like it's not just some stray line, which it was a stray line, but now it doesn't look so stray because it's got some friends. Okay, so we want to build up our dark areas. The background is going to be the darkest, so I think I'll start there. And then that way I can start comparing as I add darker areas to other places. See if I need to take this even further, etc. Be able to compare them to each other. Oh, okay, got it. Well, have fun cleaning. I hope that you have a lovely, clean, tidy space once you're done. It's always so refreshing. I love it when the house is freshly clean. It's just so satisfying. Okay, so in the flames itself, I'm going to actually make it all the way black. We'll say that the brightness of the flames is so high, so extreme, that you just can't see beyond them. And then we will create a more varied background the farther we get away from the flames. So some areas like here, it fades into flames, so we'll have little hatch marks instead of just a solid black patch. I just realized I could put this on a clipboard and then I wouldn't have to hold the paper like I've been doing. I didn't think about that until just now. I mentioned it before, I don't even remember my own process sometimes. Just like right now, this is a great example. I forgot that that's what I was doing. Using the clipboard to help me move this paper, because it sticks to... I'll wipe my pen off and get it real quick. It sticks to the tabletop cover that I have on my desk. So that's why I need it. Paper likes to stick to it. Oh, where's my little clipboard? It's not where I expected it to be. Oh, I just used it last week because I used it for, oh, here it is. Yay. Hopefully it fits on here. Ooh. Just like last week. Just barely fits. It is hanging off the bottom a little bit. It's a little too long. But that's not a problem because the drawing ends way before that point. There, now I can grab this, the clip at the top of the clipboard, to move the drawing around instead of holding the drawing, which sort of risks making a irreparable crease in the paper. This is very thick paper, so that's not that easy to do, but it is possible. All right. Back to the flames. Like I was saying earlier, this is great practice. This is what I hope great practice for my Griffia novel that I'm working on. So the interior illustrations are going to be ink, like this. Just black ink on white paper. Dang it, I keep getting ink on my finger. It's the same finger too, the pen rest finger. Ah. There, I think I got it off. I think I got the ink off. So now adding hatching in various areas is going to help create that translucent look that flame has. I was looking at a reference image yesterday, but now I'm just doing what seems like it'll work, seems appropriate. Just using my imagination basically. We do have more areas outside to add a lot more ink to as well. But I'll stick to the inside for now. Work my way out. Honestly, at this rate, I wonder if I will be able to finish this today. I really wanted to finish it today, but I have a lot of work to do. And I don't want to rush it. I want it to be the same level of quality as the other pieces I've done in this series. And probably as I go along, I'll get into such a rhythm and I'll have exhausted the easy ideas, so I will start coming up with more interesting ideas for each piece after this one. So they might end up taking longer and longer, actually. That's what I found in my visual arts career, not just a professional career trying to make a living off of it, but just since I started getting serious about making art, even if it was just fan art. I always thought that the more skilled I got, the faster things would be, but it's actually been the opposite. The more skills I have, the more complex things I want to make, and I'm not satisfied with the simple drawings that I used to do. So it's actually the opposite. The more skilled you get, the longer things take. That is what I have found. I'm adding a lot of ink here, so I'm trying not to forget that it's gonna be wet and accidentally put my hand in it. So I'm going to stretch my fingers a bit, which is a little awkward, but this is a very organic shape, so it's okay if I have a bit of a wobbly line from that. Aoife's still snoring over there. The puppies are in their opposite beds than usual. Usually Aoife's to my left and Chappie's to my right, but it's the opposite today. Because Chappie got in first and she got on the big bed. Concentrating very hard. That's why I'm not talking very much right now. I can usually keep up with explaining my thoughts and filling the air with something related to what I'm doing or thinking, but this is very precise work right here. I wanted it to be pretty dark in the dragon's mouth just so that we have a nice contrast. But I didn't want it to be as perfectly black as the crows or some of the areas inside of the flame. So I did a lot of hatching, then filled in almost everything, but left a little bit of paper showing. Just teeny tiny amount of paper showing. I wonder if it would actually be more interesting now, because I'm done with that sketch, to put the tertiary camera on my actual final drawing now. It's hard to ink next to Fafnir because I'm trying not to leave white space in between the hatch mark and the lines that comprise him, but I'm also trying not to cross the lines that comprise him, so I have to be very precise. My hand is getting a little crampy. This is a lot of lines. I'm glad so far the crows in the sky seem to be standing out fairly well, even though they are also made of hatch marks. I'm going to fill the whole sky with these kind of lines. And then I'll be able to look at it as a whole and see if and where I want to add more. It's not break time yet, but I gotta take a little break. I gotta set this down for a second. My hand is way too... Well, it's not actually my hand, it's my forearm muscle is starting to cramp up, so... Even though it feels like a bit of a waste to wipe that perfectly good ink off, it will dry on here and become sticky sludge, and I won't be able to draw. So, gotta clean that off. And I'm gonna stretch my arm. I'm doing this kind of stretch. Stretch my arm. Oh, let's do the other one to even it out. And I'll do this kind of stretch too. Let's do something completely different from what holding the pen equals. If you heard that just now, Chappie was fluffing her bed up. Chappie is my little dog. Oh, she's still doing it. It's not good enough. She really wants it fluffed up good. Is that better? She just yawned and shook herself. She's doing some swirls. And she laid down. Alright. That was fun to watch her while I was holding a stretch. Now I'm just shaking my hand out like a floppy thing. Shake the other one out too, may as well. Okay. Got about 12 minutes left before break time. So let's get back to it and see how far we can get. My lines are turning a little bit as I'm moving down, and I can't say it was originally on purpose, but maybe it was, because that's how I drew it in the sketch. When I noticed they were naturally doing that, I decided to go with it. I noticed about here that it was happening. So it might have already just been sitting in my subconscious. It might have just been happening naturally because of the way your hand arcs when you draw a line like this. Either way, I'm happy with that. I just feel like it's more interesting to have it curve kind of along with Fafnir. Alright, 1/2 of this guy is full. Let's do the other half. Hopefully this is dry. I'm gonna have to put my hand on here. It seems dry. No ink is coming out. Okay, good. Maybe I should start from Fafnir and work my way back so that I don't have to worry about the ink drying. Just a little tiny section left. Yeah, I like that. Instead of having just lines that go perfectly diagonal across the scene, having it arc a little bit is more interesting, I think. Sarah, woo, fire! Yay, I'm glad that it comes across as fire. I'm going to add even more dark close to the flames. Still got 3 minutes left, so that's plenty of time to start adding more. Because the way that it's super dark next to it and then suddenly not that dark, we need a much stronger transition. Because right now there's almost no transition at all. So we'll start adding more. So we want that contrast to be really high right next to the flames. But we don't want it to just abruptly end. Doesn't seem as natural as it could look, considering it's an ink drawing, so we can only do so much to have it look natural, but a transition from light to dark is definitely something we can create. Even though it takes a long time, using hatching to create a gradient is super fun. It's really satisfying, and it's rather organic in nature, so it doesn't have to be perfect for it to have a powerful effect visually. You don't have to use a ruler and be ever so precise and try not to overlay an extra line here or worry about this line being too long there or whatever it is. Just keep building and building. Taking a moment to look, see what the effect is, and get back in there. Keep building it up. So already down here it's a much better transition. I'm going to emphasize it even more over here. Hello, I think it might be break time. Oh ho! It is! Let me cap my ink. I don't want it to dry out or for whatever reason get spilled while I'm away. Got my ink capped. Set my drawing straight so it looks nice, although it's going to be covered up by Ranger. Gotta wipe my pen nib off. Like I said, this ink will dry into a sticky goo and then you won't be able to draw with it, so it's got to come off, even if it is a tiny bit of a waste. Okay, pen nib is nice and clean, so I will leave this stuff like this. I'm going to turn on my be right back sign. I invite everyone else to take this opportunity to take a break from whatever it is you're doing. I'm going to be back in about 5 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a great break. It's time to get back to work on this drawing of Fafnir, the Norse dwarf dragon. So I'm opening back up my ink. Let's dip that pen in there, and we're just going to keep working on what I was working on before, this transition from the very dark next to the flames and bringing it down so that it's a more gradual change from super dark to medium dark. That break seems short. It could have been like 30 seconds short. I left when it still said 30 on my watch, and I came back when it said 35. So probably was a few seconds short. But I am rested. Thank you for checking. I got some stretches in. I like full body stretches. I put more eye drops in. I did need them after all. I prefer when I don't have to put eye drops in all day, but I guess it's because winter is really in full swing now, so it's super dry. So I put them in first thing in the morning every day regardless. And I put them in right before I started the stream and some more just now, but it's better to put them in and have that. I'm grateful to have them, otherwise my eyes would be so itchy. My eyes feel like there's something in them, but then my eye doctor a long time ago identified that actually that's allergies. And so it feels like there's stuff in my eye because it's the allergic reaction of the insides of my eyelids rubbing against my eyes. So that's how I know I need eye drops, is when that's bothering me. I mean, sometimes there is something in my eyelid, a little eyelash or pet hair or something, but not as often as it feels like there's something. I also got some water, and I walked around. I got out of this room. But thank you for checking. I do appreciate that. I also want to create a little bit of dark coming up from these points, and then that way there's even more contrast to show the shiny gold. Yes, it is maddening sometimes when you say I would go crazy if my own eyelid was giving me sensations. Yes, sometimes it's like, ugh, ugh. So the past couple days it has been a bit like that because the eye drops, they help, but they're not lasting very long. And it's the same eye drops I've used for a long time, so it's got to just be because of the super dry weather. Because I just have allergies, period. I went to the allergy specialist doctor. I was referred there by my main doctor. I might have told you this story before, but she didn't like how I was taking over-the-counter allergy medicine pretty much constantly. I didn't have an allergy season. I just had allergies all the time. And I still do. But what the specialist determined was my allergic reaction is not strong enough to warrant anything other than over-the-counter medications, which weren't doing that much for me anyway. So I actually just stopped taking them after that. I was like, fine, forget it then. I'll just deal with it. So the only thing I didn't stop was the eye drops, though, because I can't stand it. Can't stand it. And before, I would rub my eyes so much before I knew it was allergies, because I thought there was something in there, and I was like, well, I can't see it, but it's got to, maybe it's stuck under my eyelid where I can't see, and I would just rub it and rub it. But of course, that was just making it worse. That's why they tell you don't rub your eyes, even though you feel like doing it. Oh yeah, and the allergy specialist determined that I am allergic to dogs. But it's not that strong of a reaction. They did the test you see. Maybe it's like a real test, but I'd only ever seen it in medical like TV shows where they scratch your back with a little bit of the allergen and then see if there's a reaction. And I didn't have any reaction to that, or maybe it was I had a reaction to a few, but it wasn't strong enough or something. But they determined that that wasn't enough, that I had to do the even, well, I don't want to be negative, but I'm going to be honest, the even worse test of they just inject the allergen directly into your skin, so it's not on top of your skin, just barely in a little scratch. They stick it in there, and that produced a stronger result for the dog. I don't know what they used. It just said dog on it, so I don't know exactly what they had in there, but I assume it would be dog dander or something. And then when the doctor saw that, he came in, saw the results, because of course he didn't do all this testing, it was like the assistants or something. And he was like, I used to tell people to get rid of their dogs, but these days I just blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm trying to keep my language in check. So I'm like, how can I put this in family-friendly terms for my stream? Well, let's just say I told him, yeah, even if you told me to get rid of my dogs, I would never do such a thing. The only time I would let allergies determine such a thing is if I was being hospitalized because I'm that allergic. I will deal with all of the itchy eyes, the sneezes, and the sniffly nose for the rest of my life, because I can provide a nice home for a few people, and I'm not going to take that away from them for my convenience. So that's that story. I might have to do a little editing at the edge here where the hatching is meeting the big patches of ink, because it's starting to overlap and still create an edge, which I don't want that edge. So I might have to tone that down, but it might be fine once I mess with the levels in Photoshop, and it might disappear anyway. So we'll see. Sarah, not injecting it now. It wasn't actually that bad, but I still prefer not to do it. You know, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever had. It wasn't as bad as, say, getting an IV, so could have been a lot worse, and it wasn't. So, and it is good to know. So we've got even more air filters in the house than we ever had before. I already had them before. We've got little ones, big ones. We've got one of those whole home HEPA filters installed on the HVAC. And yet I still have these allergy symptoms, so I guess it's really good we do have them, because if we didn't have them, it would probably be way worse. But I still snuggle with my puppies and rub my face in their fur, so it's also my fault that I have this. Because they want to snuggle with me. I'm not going to take that away from them. Just hope our baby doesn't have cat or dog allergies. It's so interesting. I didn't develop dog allergies until my 20s. That's when these symptoms started happening, so that's when I assume I started getting allergic to dogs. I grew up with dogs and cats my whole life, and I never had any problems. What I've read, I don't know how true it is, but in my life I've read that the more exposure you have in the first place as a child, the more protection you have from the chance of having allergies. So since you have dogs and cats in your house, it'll probably be protection for for your baby. I imagine that's got to be why I was fine for so long. Also, in my 20s was probably the most stressful, elongated period in my life because I was working a overnight 10 to 12 hour shift job, and I had been working it for years and years and years. And before that, I was still working a stressful overnight job for 2 years before that. So I imagine it wasn't just that the allergies just came out of nowhere. I feel like it was probably a stress response. My body was stressed out from other things, and then also these allergens are floating around me all the time. Living with my 2 pups from back then, Soon and Kenchi. And my body was like, we have to do something about this. Maybe it conflated the stress I was under due to my work with the allergens it was encountering. I don't know, it's complete conjecture. But I was fine for the longest time. My whole childhood, in fact, I was fine. And we always had cats and dogs in the house growing up. So I guess what I'm saying is, I hope the same, and I feel confident that there's a good chance that your baby will be fine, since you have dogs and cats too. So here I'm just creating a little vignette in the corner because I think it looks nice. Because we've got it in this corner, over here is flame, but I think it helps bring attention to our subject by having this sort of frame of darker around the sides. So I guess if anybody is ever wondering why I'm sniffling all the time on stream, it's those dang allergies. It's just my life. That's how it is. Sniffling all day, every day. It's actually not that bad. The worst part is just the eyes. When the eyes get dry and they've got that allergy dry, it feels like there's a hair in your eye. Like either when you get a eyelash in or a pet hair in there, and that's what it feels like. There's nothing in there, so it feels frustrating. You break out the eye drops. Okay, let me have a look-see here. Yeah, it's looking pretty cool. This area here now looks a little underworked. So I'm going to add more there just because it's standing out, and we don't want it to do that. We want it to meld in with everything else. Plus, the sky is meant to be the second darkest thing in this scene after the crows. The sky or the hall, I mean, I assume it's the sky because we got crows flying off. It could be like a big cavern or something, but the background. Oh, that's so much better. Yay, didn't need that much work for that. It's a bit of a hard stop right here at the back of his head, so let's try to make this a little bit more gradual transition here. What's that? Oh, that's much better. Right here along his head, it was just suddenly the black stops. So now it gradually comes down the back of his head instead. I think that looks much better. Maybe I want to add a little bit more dark right here. I'm looking up at my screen, my monitor to my left just as much as down at the page, because looking at the monitor really helps with seeing the overall effect. When I'm looking at the page, it's hard not to see the individual lines. It's like that saying, can't see the forest for the trees. That's what's happening here. I can't see the overall effect for the lines. I do want to add more ink to these crows. So when I do look over here on my screen, it is hard to see them now. I've added so much to the background. I will try to keep them look a little bit hatch marked-ish because I liked the idea of them not being completely solid black because they're farther away and atmospheric perspective might be taking place, might be having an effect. So with these three down here, I just inked them all the way in. So here I'm gonna just add more, but using hatching lines instead of just filling in their silhouettes. I'm going to do a little thicker on their bodies, thicker ink on their bodies, because might be able to see more through the wings. Okay, how's that look? It's still a bit wet, the ink, so it's also going to be darker just because of that, but I think that's much better. And now we really have that sort of triangle effect. This pair of crows, this pair of crows, and this single crow, creating a triangle to frame the main part of our scene, which is Fafnir's head. So for now, at least, I think I'm done with the background. How are we doing on time? A little bit over half an hour. So now, probably adding hatching to Fafnir as shading. So we've got this big flame erupting from his mouth, so he'll be pretty well lit in the front, but then that also means there should be a strong enough shadow on the back to match. Let's make sure that you can actually see in the tertiary camera. I don't know if you're hearing the puppies snoring, but they're both snoring now. Yeah, nice start. Nice start. So let's move down his body, and then we'll do more detailed shading on the face. That's where I think we would have some right here. I'm using curved lines, which also help with emphasizing his shape. So not just the shading, but the curvature of his body. He also needs some shading on him from these crows. So using the position of the crow on his body plus the position of the light to guess probably where their shadows would be falling. And some areas I'm going to do a really thick black line where he's sitting down into his treasure. And there's not going to be very much light hitting because his body is blocking it all from the flame. So this will really help ground him too. So for the areas where I think he'd be casting shadow onto the treasure hoard, I'm using curved, very curved lines to create hatching. To create a shadow that hopefully matches the expected texture of a treasure hoard. And just like on the top, I'm adding a vignette effect in the corners to help direct attention toward the middle of the scene. Aoife just had a nice shake, if you were wondering what that sound was. Ooh, that's looking so much better. It looks so much more like a treasure hoard. Look at it. Ah, it looks awesome, if I do say so myself. I had to pull back, like I was saying. I was just seeing these little curly lines. So pull back and especially look over in my monitor and see the overall effect. Ah, it's so good. Yay. I do think we need a little bit more dramatic shading on Fafnir himself. So let's add that. I think I'm going to turn it. I don't want to get my hands on the part that I was just working on in case it's still wet. So I'm going to turn it over. So I can work on Fafnir, not have this clip in my way, and also not risk putting my hand in wet ink and smudging it. So I'm not going to just draw over the lines that I already have. I'm going to draw it smaller so that the darker shadow takes up a smaller space, so we have a sort of gradient effect. We'll leave it right up to his eye too. That'll be a little visual cue guiding the viewer. Oh, instantly better. I don't even need to look at the small version on the screen. It's way better. So let's continue. Hopefully by now this stuff at the bottom is dry. Let's turn it back over. So actually, there's still a fair amount of time left, so I might be able to get this done today. I gotta say, this is one of my favorite ones I've done so far, and I'm of this series, and I'm not even done yet. Not even finished yet with this piece. Definitely have a lot more shadow down here, just plain old farther from the flames. Plus there's lots of stuff overlapping each other over here. His leg folding in on itself, so that's gonna just naturally be darker. His foot and the bottom part of his leg, the same kind of thing is happening there. And having the darker shadow here not only seems appropriate for the flames, but it helps that knee stand out from the main part of the body. It's getting lost in there a little bit, but now it can stand out. Shadows from the crows a little darker. I just want this tail to be darker overall at the bottom. is the overall effect there? Maybe a little bit. Oh, I'm afraid of the ink still being wet. I have to turn it back over. Maybe a little bit more here. This is just farther away from the flame, period. Regardless of what side of the body is facing the flame, this part of his body is overall farther away, so it should be a little darker. The light, not as much light is reaching out that far. And then that way he can be darker against the treasure hoard, which is supposed to also be just as bright in this scene as the flame. Okay, how's that look? Oh, looks pretty good. Oh, I'm so excited. I want a little bit more dark under here. Really super dark under here. And let's really bring in the heavy dark. Fully inked in just right here. It seems like it needs it. Yeah, it helps him look really heavy, which he would be. I mean, look at him. This is a crow. Look at the size of him. Yeah, that looks much better. Maybe he would actually be casting a little bit more shadow off of his leg. So that this section is darker. And have a little bit more over here too. Whoa, nice. Okay, I just feel like toward the outside edge we need a little bit more on the gold hoard here where it's super white right here. Add a little bit more in. I don't have to fill the whole area, I don't think, but just a little bit of something. Yeah. Let's do the same thing over here. Just little light touches so that it's not a completely clean white patch. At least not this far down, not this far away from the flames. The flame is up here. So up here, we can have these really super bright white patches. Man, who knew that I'd be drawing fan art for my first illustration of the year? I just finished that story, reading that book, that J.R.R. Tolkien's version of Fafnir and Company's story. Alright. My pen has been a little temperamental over the past, I don't know, half hour or so. And I think it's because I've been doing so much inking that it's really starting to get caked with ink. And there's also more spilled ink on my hand than I thought. I'm trying to get that off. I want to get that off of my hand because I don't want to accidentally put it on the paper later. So you never know. It might seem fairly dry, but just something about the combination of your oil, even with my super dry hands, still it has a little bit of natural oil in there, and I've just learned. I've learned that that can happen, so I'm wiping my... Well, I wiped it. I wiped my pen nib. Now I want to look at this. So I think I might be done with the inking part. It looks really good in my monitor over to my left. My secondary monitor, basically what y'all are seeing on Twitch and YouTube if you're watching the recording. Hello, recording people. So I'm just looking it over. Double check there's nothing that really stands out, like what the heck? Why is this like this? But it seems really good. Flame definitely looks like a flame. Super happy about that. The crows in the sky are standing out nicely. Maybe I could do a little bit more hatching just right here. Seems a little bit too strong, but just super light, just super light. Just barely touching the pen to the paper. Okay, that's a little smoother there. That's nice. His foot. This is really dark shadows next to it. There's not as many coming out from the heel, so I'm going to add a little bit more there. There is a point when you should just call it good, though. So I wonder if I'm reaching that point. You can overwork it. It's possible. I think I just got my 10-minute warning that there's 10 minutes left in the stream. It would be nice to at least get this scanned in to Photoshop. Today. I would like that very much indeed. Alright, I'm going to call it good there. But this is not the last thing I'm going to do with ink. I need to write the name of the magical creature at the top. This is the journal part, sketchbook part. Fafnir. Can't remember what order I was putting them in, but I can always rearrange it. I often do. I was writing time of day. What time of day would this be? Well, it can't be night, because the sky is a little something. Well, it could be close to night, though. I've already done midnight, though. Maybe we'll call it dusk. Okay, Google, what's the difference between twilight and dusk?
On the website natureescapes.co.uk, they say, during twilight there is still light in the sky. There are 3 types of twilight: civil, nautical, and astronomical. Dusk is the point when the sun is at 18 degrees below the horizon and there is no longer any sunlight in the sky.
Ooh. Let's call it dusk. That sounds cool. And that seems appropriate for the scene. We already did midnight for Baba Yaga. Okay, dusk. And then I'm writing the actual date, even though it doesn't make sense because in Fafnir's story he's been killed. But let's just say he's magical and she somehow found him anyway. So writing the date, 23 January. I'm writing the actual real date of finishing this. 2025. And then we will call this Norway. The story of Fafnir is actually told all over Europe, especially Northern Europe and the Nordic countries. We'll call it Norway because Norway, at least in the English pronunciation of the country name, the English version of the country name, Norse is clearly part of that, and this is a Norse myth character. So, this is super exciting. It's time to put this into the computer. I wonder if maybe Chibi Friday tomorrow will work a little bit on this, finishing this up. But we'll see what we can get done today. We still have 7 minutes. So for now, I'll leave you with that view while I switch over to my digital workspace, including getting my scanner going. I'm going to move my secondary monitor so I can see it. Ooh, Chappy just had a big stretch. Nice big stretch. Okay, I'm going to mute my mic for a sec so I can move it. And I'm back. I think this is a great opportunity to turn the camera on to Chappy. Hopefully she's visible. I can't see. There. You can see Chappy there. Put it a little lower. The other camera for Aoife is harder to move, so we're not going to move it for Aoife. Okay, I've taken my drawing over to the scanner along with my swipey brush, which I use to swipe away any dust, both from the scanner glass and from my piece here. Okay. Now I'm putting the drawing in the scanner. Oh, I need my mouse and my keyboard. Oh! Keyboard is tucked away behind the sketchbook. Alright, here we go. Alrighty. Opening my scanning program and I'll switch over to my desktop view. Whee! Preview. There it is. Wow, this paper scan's very yellow. I'm just moving the marquee so that it's capturing everything, not cutting anything off. And we're going to flip it, so that just makes it one less thing for me to do in Photoshop. And then scan. In the meantime, I'll get Photoshop going. going. Ooh, it's going to take a little bit. As I expected, once I start Photoshop, the fans ramp up on my tower. Halfway. Oh, it's done. The estimation wasn't very accurate. Okay, turn the scanner off so you don't have to listen to that whine sound. Alright, open this. First things first, let's save it. Save as. Career files, visual art, artwork, and this is only the second Photoshop file of the year. Wow. Maginaturalist's Sketchbook. Fafnir. I want to check what I've been naming this, though. I'll save it like that for now. I want to have the nomenclature be consistent across all these pieces, but for now, that's good. Okay, first thing, let's make a copy of the background. Last time I didn't remember to do that. It's probably not a problem, but I like to do that just in case something goes terribly wrong, then I have that background file layer to go back to. So now, let's desaturate. Step 1 of removing that blue. Next, we're going to work with the levels, and that should remove most, if not all of it. Yeah, it looks like the ones in the middle, I'm going to have to manually remove. I wonder if it's because of the paper quality. So these usually, especially right here where there's no ink other than that blue ink, these usually come off better. Okay, maybe if I don't desaturate first. There's another way you can mess around with this. Let's see if I can remove it while it's still a color. Cyans. It doesn't come all the way away. Well, let's try desaturating now. I mean, worst case scenario, I'll just go in and clean it up manually. But it is nice when this works. Okay, it's desaturated. Oh, and we're at time. I don't want to stop in the middle of a process. I'll forget where I was by next week. Because tomorrow is Chibi Friday, so I won't be working on this one. At least what I hoped is happening, that line where the ink was overlapping, because there was just so much ink on the page, disappears when I do this. And I have more effectively removed these lines from the edges, so that's good. The gradient is a little less subtle. Obviously, when you bring the black and the white so close together, it's just going to happen that way. So I've got to decide, do I want to be able to remove more of the blue lines. Like this one right here, it looks like I'm just going to have to manually fix that. It doesn't want to disappear. But at least here, it's gone from the edges. Turn the black down a little bit. You can see that line I was talking about here. That's just from so much ink sitting on top of each other. At least that's disappearing. Eva's still snoring. Her mouth is twitching, so I think she's having a dream. Just trying to see before or after. Should I take down black a little bit? No, I like to have it up at least this high, because then that line disappears that I was talking about. Like right here, we've got some really dark patches, and maybe it's fine. Maybe it's not a problem. Like right here, random dark patch that's not as strong in the original. Maybe if we bring the white up. Okay. The words aren't as dark as I'd like because they're so thin. Maybe I'll bring the black up just a bit more. Okay, let's call that good. Yay, let's save. So there we go. At least I finished the physical media for this piece, so I'm going to have to work on it either off stream, because I would really like to have it done in time to send us Patreon rewards, which right now I have scheduled to do on Tuesday, which is before I'll resume illustration streaming. Or I could just do it on Wednesday. So I'll think about it over the weekend. I'll think what I want to do. So for now, we'll call that good. We are over time for streaming, so I will let you go now. And I'll be back tomorrow at the same time as usual for some Chibi Friday. We'll be starting another, I think it's a gift chibi. I think it's my sister's, it's going to be my sister's cat. For her birthday chibi, she requested her cat. So I think that's who will be chibifying tomorrow. I hope to see you then, but even if not, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for watching.